Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 Sony Open DFS Tactics show. We have a lot to cover. We're going to look at the forecast. We're going to take a look at some ownership projections. Of course, at the end of the show, we're going to have the 2025 picks selection continue with Gabe and my selections for the Sony Open. So you want to make sure you tune in and stay tuned in to the end of the show for that. In fact, I'll get into that in the intro. But we have a lot to cover. It's the first full field event of the PGA Tour for the 2025 year. Looking forward to it. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where earlier this week I posted some research around prior winners of the Sony Open, some patterns they all share, and the players in the field this week who also fit those patterns. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday evening, so that'll be out after DFS Tactics show tonight. So make sure you look over on X for that. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. It is really a great way to start your week of preparation. And as I was going to mention and saved it for now, both of our write-ups on our selections have been posted over on his social media account. Again, his description his handle is in the description. Make sure make sure you follow him over there to see both of our write-ups for our selections, which we'll cover at the end of the show. And make sure you are following him on social media and subscribe to his article. You really are missing out if you are not doing that. And then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all in addition to the poll question, which I'll post momentarily. Who's your winner? Who are you targeting, staying away from? How much do you think the wind, a little foreshadowing there, is going to play a factor? Make your opinion heard this evening in chat. And if you aren't able to catch the show live, put it down in the comments. Gabe and I would also very much appreciate if you played along with our selections. Put your choices in chat or in the comments. We would love to hear what you all think, not only of our selections, but make your own and play against us. So we'd love to have you all do that with us. But we are here for the Sony, so let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2025 Sony Open. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Wednesday evening with the forecast over at Windfinder. Again, unfortunately, no super forecast, at least for this particular location, which is essentially right next to the golf course. This is Waialae Beach Park, Oahu. No super forecast, but what we can glean, and I'll actually refresh the page for you all. What we can glean here is that wind is going to be a major factor this week. The local tee times start around 8 a.m. So don't get too carried away with the fact that it appears that the Thursday a.m. has a bit of an advantage. They do, but it's not as much as you might think, considering they're not going to tee off at 2 a.m. They're not going to tee off at 5 a.m. They're going to tee off right around 8. And you see the wind picks up throughout the day. So there isn't a whole lot of advantage here for the Thursday a.m. I would say very, very slight. And then we move to Friday, and there's a significant advantage for the Friday morning portion of the wave. You can see that the winds really pick up. Looks like there's a chance for a shower around lunch, at least in Oahu on Friday. And then the winds really, really pick up. 20-mile-an-hour sustained winds, and it stays throughout the rest of the tournament. 20s all throughout the weekend. So because of this forecast, I have a fairly significant advantage to the Thursday PM, Friday AM portion of the draw. Again, I would not get carried away with this here. Thursday AM might have a slight favor, but they're not going to tee off at 2 or even 5 a.m. They're teeing off at 8. And by that time, it appears, at least based on this forecast, that their advantage will have disappeared quite a bit. And then Friday, a very clear advantage for the Friday morning. And not only that, you see that the Thursday PM and Friday AM are dealing with consistent winds. You know, mid-teens and then gusts into the 20s for both of their rounds, whereas the Thursday AM starts off, much akin to the others, and then really picks up Friday afternoon. So I would not want to be a part of this Friday afternoon. Unfortunately, most of the players that I like this week have the Thursday AM, Friday PM draw. So we're going to try to navigate through that. But as it stands right now, using this forecast, I have a pretty significant advantage for the Thursday PM, Friday AM portion. All right, with that, we're going to move to Fantasy National. And we're going to cover a couple of things real quick. And I really thought I remembered to unstar these players. So this gives you a great opportunity to check the poll question, which I also just realized I didn't post. So let me do that. The poll question for this week is a rather simple one, but interesting in how you're going to build your lineups. The poll question: of the two 10K plays, which are you putting into your lineup? Are you using Hideki? Are you using Corey Connors? Are you using both? Meaning, you're generally going stars and scrubs? Or are you going or putting neither into your lineups and you're going more balanced? So would love to hear your all's thoughts on the poll question. I am going to check. We have 2024. I'm actually going to go all the way back to the beginning of 2023 because we're going to look at some wind metrics. Your top performers in moderate and windy conditions since the beginning of 2023. Your top wind performers: Denny McCarthy, Corey Connors, Sahith Theegala, Harry Hall, Brendan Todd, Andrew Novak, Keegan Bradley, Andrew Putnam, Patrick Rogers, Adam Schenk. Hideki, Harmon, Siwoo Kim, Ben Griffin, Mark Hubbard round out your top 15. I was saying during the Windfinder portion that the local tee time is at 8. Looks like I was slightly mistaken. Looks like they are going at 7:20. So perhaps the earliest of early Thursday AM draw gets a fairly significant advantage tomorrow. But they still have the worst of the wind on Friday. So I still hold that the Thursday PM, Friday AM is a fairly significant advantage overall. Pretty significant. Anyway, there's a look at your top wind performers, moderate and windy, in the past couple of years. Now, normally we would have looked at easy. Based on that forecast, it might play more average this week, which I'm going to tell you now, I've got the easy relative to par filter on at least one metric, maybe two, because that forecast changed a little bit today. Really, really picked up for the week. Having said that, I still think that it's appropriate for the metric that I used the easy filter on. So anyway, there's your top wind performers. If you wanted to see the other side of that coin, the players who have not been good in the wind past couple of years, Max McGreevy, Eric Van Rooyen, James Hahn, Kaito Onishi, Camille Villegas, Snedeker, Nico Echeverria, Matty Schmid, Tom Kim. Interesting. We'll go into him here in a moment. Thorbjornsen, Gordon, Harry Higgs, Seamus Power on down. Now, Tom Kim's an interesting case here. Remember, I've got the moderate and the windy filter selected. You see that in the windiest of windy conditions, he's actually been really good. It's the moderate, which he's been really bad. But a closer inspection of these 41 rounds, take a look. He's been pretty bad in his past maybe 15 or so. You've got the FedEx St. Jude round 4, he lost 2.5. Lost 5 at the Valero in a round. It was really in 2023 that he was good in the moderate and windy conditions. He was really, really bad at the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024. So take that for what you will. That is why Tom Kim is really far down on the wind performance, despite the fact that he generally plays in the windiest of windy conditions very, very well. All right, enough of that. Let's get into the mixed condition model that I have made for this week. And, of course, the reveal of my rankings, go through the price board, and all of that. So my mixed condition model for the week, let's zoom in here just a little bit. We're going to start with 5% off the tee on short courses. And I think this is going to play even more appropriate this week considering the wind. When I made this model yesterday, I did not have this specific forecast in mind for it. I think the off the tee is going to play even a little bit more. Players are going to have to be in control of their golf ball this week with all the wind. So I want to see, distance maybe a little bit, but more so, who can find the fairway on these short courses, especially with the wind that is in the forecast. So 5% off the tee, 15% approach should be self-explanatory at this point. 15% on average and fast Bermuda greens. My expectation, given the forecast, that these are going to be average in speed, but that is yet to be seen. 15% putting. We've talked all week how this can turn into a putting contest. I don't know if it does this week, but generally speaking, putting has been the most important shot type around Waialae anyway. So an even split there between putting and approach. 10% good drives gained, as I was mentioning with the off the tee. I want to see the players who are going to hit these fairways, or if they are still good enough to hit greens from the rough. That's going to be a little bit more difficult this week with all the wind. So 10% in good drives gained, again using the filter short courses. 15% birdies are better when rounds are easy. As a statistician, I want to try to keep things consistent. So using a scoring metric like birdies or bogeys or eagles or whatnot, with a scoring filter, easy or difficult, that's always going to be my preference as a statistician, is to keep things consistent. So that's why I'm using the easy relative to par filter on this metric. If you're asking what I really think will happen, I think the scoring will be average. But birdies are better. 15% birdies are better gained when rounds are easy. Eagles do happen here, especially on the 2 par 5s. So there is that. I would probably drop this to maybe 10% given the new the forecast from today. But here we are, 5% in the proximities that we discussed Monday night that are the most statistically significant, seemingly. And not only that, these are the ranges that the majority of the approach shots come from. I believe 48.5 or 49% of approach shots at Waialae come from these two ranges. 25 and some change here, and about 22 to 23 from this range. However, Monday night we saw that the 175 to 200 was actually slightly more important, at least for players that have finished in the top 30. Both of them are going to be very, very important, going to be very prevalent, especially with all the wind. I can see these professionals really laying back off the tee to make sure they're in the fairway. So 5% in each of these proximities. And then to round out the mixed condition model, you see that there is no par 3 metrics. If there would have been, it would have been 175 to 200, but they just don't add a whole lot of significance. So instead, 10% each in the 400 to 450, 450 to 500 par 4s, and then the 500 to 550 par 5s. The only other thing, and this is consistent throughout the entirety of the mixed condition model, is that I started at 2024, so the beginning of 2024 to the century, like we've done for the past couple of weeks in our research. However, for some total metrics like approach, like putting, I did include last week's century, proximities, par 4s, and whatnot. The only ones that don't have the century included are the good drives and the strokes gained off the tee, because they're on short course. They're using the short course filter. Kapalua is not a short course. So there is a look at the mixed condition model that I have made for the Sony Open this week. One glaring omission given this updated forecast is around the green. I thought about it even before this forecast, decided that I really wanted to lean into the accuracy off the tee box. If around the green plays a factor, and I think it very well could, considering the amount of wind, I'll be a little weak to that. That's just being upfront and honest about it, considering I made the model yesterday. But otherwise, feel pretty confident with this. The reveal of my rankings, and again, I don't factor in tee times or wind or anything like that into my rankings. These are strict numerical rankings on a mathematical formula. That's why we have this column, and I'll go into it. My rankings for the Sony go as such. Ben Griffin is my number 1 player this week. Ben On is second. Austin Eckroat, Tom Hoagie, and Siwoo Kim round out my top 5. Keith Mitchell, Brian Harmon, Keegan, Ryo Itsatsune, and Russell Henley round out my top 10. Quick reminder, if you're a returning viewer, for your information, if you're a new viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, which is a numerical ranking based on the mixed condition model we just covered, the metrics and percentages in them. Fantasy National will spit out a ranking based on that. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical rank or numerical value based on how well they have played that course in the past 5 years. The lower the number, the better. So somebody like Ben On, who's had a T12 and a T2, has a very, very low, very good course value, whereas somebody like Davis Thompson, who has struggled both times he's played, is pretty high. And then we are playing DFS, so the third factor into my rankings is projected ownership, and these are per Fantasy National. So projected ownership is also a factor into my rankings. We're looking for unique options, so the more unique a player is, the more they're going to rise in my rankings. So those are what those are the criteria that make up the actual ranking. Now what you see here is I have another column added for this draw. And this is, again, how I interpret the forecast for the week at Waialae. Again, with that, what I feel is a fairly, pretty significant advantage for the PM, AM, Thursday PM, Friday AM. That's why you'll see those players in green, and then the AM, PM in red. As I was mentioning, unfortunately, most of the players that I like are in the AM, PM portion. So we're going to have to figure out how we want to maneuver that or incorporate that. Maybe you see things differently. Maybe you think the Thursday AM has the advantage because they have the best wind. That is one way to look at it. I don't see it that way, but you can make that argument. Anyway, there's a look at my top 10. No real surprise, I don't think. Ben Griffin, very popular. Austin Eckroat's getting a lot of steam. Ben On, who's been very good here. Tom Hoagie, but when you start looking in, putting a lot of weight in approach, he's actually been pretty good on these average speed Bermuda greens because putting is not his strong suit. He's starting to rise, and of course, being unique. You see some really unique options here rising. Russell Henley's getting hurt because of his severe amount of ownership, the most projected owned player in the slate. Anyway, so there's that. We are going to sort on the price board, figure out where members of Fantasy National seem to be gravitating, and then how we can maneuver around that chalk. So, in the 10Ks, the crux, the reasoning for, or the emphasis on the poll question, we only have 2 players. In the 10Ks this week, we have Hideki at 11,000, Corey Connors at 10.2. Between these two, I would go with Corey Connors. I just do not think Hideki is going to, it's an obvious answers are obvious. I'm going to take the field as opposed to Hideki, completing the Hawaiian double. But also, and he was pretty good, very good last week on the greens at the Century. I just don't see him repeating that performance. He's actually not been the best. Actually, he's been pretty poor getting birdies when it's easy. Now, again, his saving grace, he is on what I perceive the good half of the draw. But so is Corey Connors. In fact, I think they're in the same grouping. Corey Connors is slightly more owned. And you always worry about Connors' putter. But Connors is taking advantage of these par 5s, at least the length of these par 5s, much more than Hideki has. And I just think Corey Connors is going to be much more in control of his golf ball, especially, in the wind. You see these good drives gained, meaning hitting the fairway or hitting the green from the rough. Hideki has kind of struggled. Corey Connors is fine. Not great, but fine. They both have struggled to get birdies when it's easy, or at least going extremely low when it's easy. They both struggle putting, so I think the tiebreaker there is the good drives gained, the ability to control your golf ball. So give me Corey Connors of these two, but my answer is not Corey Connors for the poll question. So in the 10Ks, I'll probably use Corey Connors just a slight bit because he's so good in the wind. I mean, Hideki's very good in the wind too, but I don't foresee him having the same kind of putting week that he did last week. I mean, he gained 10.5 last week. It's unsustainable even for a very good putter. And Hideki's not a very good putter. So give me Corey Connors. I might have Hideki once just for the coverage. But you got to understand, I play multiple lineups, so I can afford to spread out a little bit and afford to have some coverage. If I'm only playing one lineup, I'm telling you, I'm not using either of them. Tells you the kind of lineups I'm building. Moving into the 9Ks, Henley, I really, really like. I mean, this is the chalk that I will eat instead of Corey Connors and Hideki. I like Henley. He's been very, very good here. You're going to see Russell Henley a lot later on in the pick selection, foreshadowing. He's been very, very good here. 2 top 10s in his past 3 tries here. A former winner. Granted, it was way back in, I believe, 2012, but he's won here before. Henley really, really likes Wiley. A little nervous with Tom Kim, considering he's been really bad in the wind lately. I'm actually not very high on Keegan. Don't get fooled by this putting here and his playoff loss last year to Grayson Murray. I mentioned this in the write-up that is over on social media. Keegan gained 4.5 last year here at Wiley. He's played this tournament 10 or 11 times, No, 12 times. He's played this tournament 12 times. He gained 4.5 or 4.6 last year. The highest amount he had gained at the Sony prior to last year was 1.7. So last year was a complete aberration. Complete wild card. Complete outlier. So I'm just off of Keegan. He has generally not been very good here. We saw this Sunday night. He's went runner-up, miscut, runner-up, miscut. And if you're going to follow a pattern, he's going to miss the cut. Now, I don't know, if you don't believe in the pattern, then he might not miss the cut. But I just don't see Keegan performing well. I do like Ben on a lot this week. 13.1 is fair in terms of ownership. I'm a little concerned with the half of the draw he's in, but like most of these guys, I like a lot in the AM PM, so I'm just gonna have to suck it up. But I do like Ben on a lot. McNeely getting some attention. It's okay. He's played well here, so just realize he's not going to be that unique, but it's fine. I want to like Siwoo, winner 3 years ago. I'll have him. 10% is extremely fair for Siwoo. But he's just not a very good putter on Bermuda. So in the nines, I'm going to have a lot of Russell Henley. I'm actually going to have a lot of Ben on. If Ben on doesn't play well, I will lose. I'll have my fair share of Siwoo. I'm just kind of off of everybody else. I explained why on Keegan. McNeely, it's more so the ownership. I mean, I'll have him probably once or twice because he's on the good half of the draw. But I want other more unique options if I'm playing somebody just because of the half of the draw they're on. And Sahith Theegala has been really bad here. You want to talk about somebody who needs to control their golf ball. Sahith Theegala needs a course where you can get away with a lot of mistakes. And Waialae will punish you if you are severely offline. And Sahith Theegala can get severely offline. So, not terribly high on Sahith Theegala. Moving into the eights, Poston, who I was extremely high on last week, cooling the Jets there. I think it's still okay, but not nearly as high as I was on him last week. Pendrith, one of my more bold suggestions, I'm going to completely fade Taylor Pendrith. You see this ownership. It's very, very high. His performance here has been pretty poor. I'm not a big fan of Taylor Pendrith this week. Instead, I'm going to use Austin Eckroat. This is the second piece of chalk that I will eat. Technically, it's the second of three. But if I'm going to use a lot of Russell Henley, I also eat the chalk on Austin Eckroat. I like Eckroat quite a bit this week. I am worried about his putter, considering this place really promotes putting. Eckroat's not a great putter, but he should give himself at least a lot of opportunities. Plenty of birdies or better gained. He's the number one good drives gained player, at least on short courses. Very good irons. I'm just going to have to pray for a good putting week. It is what it is. Kitayama, fine. Interesting, I think, because of the proximities. He's the number 1 and number 3 in each of those ranges. He's not been the best here, but it's interesting. I will definitely sprinkle some Kitayama in some of my lineups. Davis Thompson, I liked him last week. He disappointed. He's unique, but he's been pretty bad here. So stomach that, if you will. Everybody seems to be clamoring for Luke Clanton. Okay. I can't get excited about the projected ownership. I mean, he's an all-world talent. I'm saying nothing about. You're taking nothing away from him as a player. I do not like this ownership. The third piece of chalk I'm going to use is Ben Griffin. I love Ben Griffin. You're going to see him a whole lot in the pick selection and on social media for me later. He's been very good here. Good putter on these slower Bermuda greens. I also mentioned in the write-up that's over on Gabe's post that you take a look at Ben Griffin's top 10s historically on the PGA Tour, they're at these places, these short courses that you have a little bit of miss room. Waialae, you have a little bit of miss room. You can't get too wayward like Tagala can, but you do have some miss room. You also think about the Wyndham, and you think about the Bermuda Championship. Those places, short, just like Waialae. You've got some miss room at both of those places. So this is a good conceptually for Ben Griffin, and he also has a top 15 here a couple of years ago. So really, really like Ben Griffin. I would not be surprised to see this ownership creep up closer to 20%. It is what it is. I'm going to use Ben Griffin. He's somebody I've targeted all week. And Harry Hall is okay. I would have liked him a whole lot more if it was easy. You also see he's on the bad half of the draw. I'll still have him, but not necessarily as much as I would have, given that I don't think it's going to be a birdie fest, and he's on the bad half of the draw. So in the 8s, completely off of Pendrith, I'll use the Eckroat and the Ben Griffin chalk. I love both of those players. I think Kitayama is quite interesting this week. I like Luke Clanton, but I hate this ownership, so I'm going to try to limit my use of Luke Clanton. Harman and Harry Hall are probably fine. I'm just worried about their half of the draw. Moving into the upper 7s, first person I want to talk about is Cam Davis. Like, you see this course value, it is fantastic. This is somebody else I mentioned over in the write-up. He is 5 for his last 5 here at Waialae. 5 for 6 total in making the cut. He missed the cut in his first try at Waialae and then has made the cut every time since, with nothing worse than like a 30-second. I mean, 30 seconds not great, but it's not like he's making the cut and then falling apart or anything. Like, he's still mildly in contention. The metrics hate him. I mean, literally the only thing that's going for him is this average and fast Bermuda putting. I mean, the irons haven't been good. The good driver's gains are bad. He's bad on these shorter par 4s. Nothing statistically points to Cam Davis other than the fact that he has just played Waialae very well. So this is why he is mentioned in that write-up, and you'll see him later on in the show in the pick selection. I do want to highlight Cam Davis for you, and he's also got the good half of the draw. So take that for what you will. Kirk loves Waialae, bad half of the draw. It's okay. He really disappointed me last week. So cooling the jets on Chris Kirk. Hoagie, surprising to see Hoagie with the good half of the draw at 6.5%. I think Fantasy National, at least, is really cooled off on the idea of Hoagie in the wind because he's really bad in the wind. Number 2 iron player, putting on his best, surface statistically. As much as I hated him being number 1 last week, I mean, he still played extremely well. It's really hard to ignore Tom Hoagie and the fact that he's putt pretty well here. So, I mean, this can go south very, very quickly because he is not a very good putter. He can miss a lot of fairways. He is not a good driver of the golf ball. So this can go south quickly, but it's quite interesting to see him at only 6.5%. I love Harris English. You see the number 2 putter on these slower Bermuda greens, working his way back from injury. I think he's back. You see all of his stats from last year when he was still injured. Like, you think about his fall. His fall was fantastic. I think you ignore Harris English at your own risk. Again, he didn't rate out well because a lot of these metrics are gathered from when he was still hurt. I think he's healthy. I think you need to find ways to put Harris English into your lineups this week. And until the overcorrection happens and they start pricing him in the 8s or even the 9s, and or the ownership starts jumping, I think Harris English is going to do a lot of wonders for you. So ride out Harris English early. Someone else I want to highlight for you is Matt McCarty. I know he doesn't have any putting statistics here, but the guy was known as a putter on the Korn Ferry Tour, and you're coming to a tournament, the Sony Open, that highlights putting. Kind of like Denny McCarthy in that respect. Be on the lookout for Matt McCarty this week. A few players in here moving into the mid-sevens that are interesting, like Eric Cole. I'm always going to be dancing around with Eric Cole. Berger, much like Harris English, is getting healthy. A lot of these statistics are being taken from when he wasn't healthy. He's also played very well here. So Berger is quite interesting. I was very high on Dietrich last week. I'm not this week, mostly because I think his big strength, his driver, is mitigated here. Power, okay, I suppose. Novak's okay, so I suppose, but they both haven't been the best around Waialae. And then moving into the low sevens, couple of names that I really want to give you. Talking about no putting, you want to believe in the ball striking. Keith Mitchell again at 6%. Like again, you have to stomach a bad putter, but the guy is a ball striking extraordinaire. So if you're not worried about the putter, you can think about Keith Mitchell. Adams Vinson's worth a mention. Played pretty well here in few tries, I think 3. Decent with the irons. Very good on these short par 4s. That's where he makes us high. You think about his win at the RSM. They have a lot of 400, 450 par 4s that he really took advantage of. So, I mean, it fits that thought process. Not the best on slower Bermuda greens, but he's worth a look. But the name that I want to give you the most in the low sevens is Ryo Hitsatsune. He finished T30 last year. I was extremely high on him last year. He actually, even though he was T30, I mean, he got me quite a bit of money because he was unique and no one's paying attention to him again. Yeah, the bad half of the draw kind of sours it a little bit, but the Sony has been a springboard for a lot of Japanese players, not just Hideki. You see 8th and birdies are better. Second in these shorter par 4s, which I was just hyping up Svensson for. Second in those. Really takes advantage of these shorter par 5s. So I really like Ryo Hitsatsune. I am a little disappointed that he is on the bad half of the draw, but I'm still going to use quite a bit of Hitsatsune. Now, full disclosure, I'm not in the 6s this week, which tells you, again, the kind of lineups I'm building. But in the interest of giving you a mad scientist type play, the most projected owned player in the 6s seems to be Patton Gazier, who rated out the highest for me in the 6s. The guy had a really good fall. Wasn't great last week at the Century. So I have a slight bit of concern because he actually lost strokes with the irons, which he hadn't done all fall. Still, the guy is still in great form. Just be aware he's probably the most common 6K play. So instead, I want to point you at somebody that's less than 1% owned. It's Ryan Gerard. He would be the mad scientist play if I were playing in the 6Ks this week. I'm not. But I want to point you to Ryan Gerard. Now, never played the Sony, but there is one thing that he does extremely well. He takes advantage of par 5s, which is what you have to do at Waialae. He takes advantage of par 5s. What little statistics there are from 2024 are pretty good because he was on the Korn Ferry Tour. He's earned his card. He is a full member this year. I like Gerard as a sneaky play if you're trying to squeeze in a whole lot up top. Gerard would be the mad scientist play if I were playing in the 6s this week. Honorable mention as well to Gabe's suggestion, Frankie Sapan, I think is how you say that. All right, with that, let's start making some lineups. We're going to start with tiers contests and then move to our big GPPs. Tiers contest, Tier 1, Hideki, Corey Connors, Russell Henley. I'm going to go with Henley. I'm hoping he's the most unique option in this tier. I don't think he will be. Hey, good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. It's good to see you this week and this evening. Hopefully we're going to continue, or at least you're going to be able to continue your hot start to 2025 just in time for our lineup portion and then the pick selections. But you had such a fantastic week last week, so kudos again to you. And just remember the good week you had last week when I inevitably have a horrendous week, because I'm not right all the time. But I'm glad whatever information you got from this show was able to help you. It's good to see you this evening. So yeah, Tier 1, I'll take Henley. Connors is interesting. I'll take Henley. Tier 2, Tom Kim, Keegan, Ben On, Bobby Mack, and Tagala. Pretty easy Ben On for me, even if he is the most popular choice in the tier. Give me Ben On in Tier 2. Tier 3 is McNeely, Siwoo, Poston, Pendrith, and Kitayama. Ooh, interesting. I'll go. Yeah, I mean, I want to like Siwoo the most here, but I'm worried about his half of the draw, so I might take Kitayama in Tier 3. Probably going to be pretty unique, would be my guess. It's between Siwoo and Kitayama. A lot of it is based on the fact that Kitayama, in my opinion, has the good half of the draw. If you don't see the forecast the way I do, you can change this up, but I'm going to take Kitayama in Tier 3. Otherwise, I would take Siwoo. Tier 4, Eckroat, Davis Thompson, Clanton, Brian Harmon, Ben Griffin, Harry Hall, and Billy Horschel. I like two players a lot in this tier, Eckroat and Griffin. Both of them have the bad half of the draw, so give me Ben Griffin. Tier 5, Horschel, Sepp Straka, Cam Davis, Chris Kirk, Mackenzie Hughes, Hoagie, English, and McCarthy. I'll take Harris English. I think he's just fully back and healthy. And then finally, Tier 6, McCarty, Cole, Berger, Dietrich, Novak, Power, and Thorbjornsen. Give me the one guy that I think has the good half of the draw, and Matt McCarty. So this tier's construction goes Henley, Ben On, Kitayama, hopefully getting some uniqueness there. Tier 4, Ben Griffin, very close between him and Eckroat, but I'll take Ben Griffin. Tier 5 is English, and then Tier 6 is Matt McCarty, the only one I perceive to have the good half of the draw. All right, with that, let's start making some lineups, figure out how at least members of Fantasy National seem to be building their big GPP lineups and how we can maneuver around them. So starting off, we're going to use the most projected owned player, and that's Russell Henley. And then from here, next would be something like Mav McNeely, probably. Going down, there isn't a whole lot being used down in the low 7s or 6s. Patton Desire is the highest owned 6 at 5.5. You've got Joe Highsmith at 9%. Otherwise, looks like the majority of, at least Fantasy National, seems to be bottoming out at Lucas Glover at 11%. Berger also at 14%. So Lucas Glover, Daniel Berger, gives them 8,000 per player. Depends on how you think they're building their lineups. If they're going more balanced with this or more a little bit more top heavy. Luke Clanton is definitely in this. 77. Chris Kirk is just 100 more. So maybe they come off of McNeely. Yeah. Come off of McNeely to Taylor Pendrith or Pendrith, apparently. Taylor Pendrith. It's leaving a little bit on the table, but 93% for a full field event is ugly. That's quite a bit there. and they might not be using Chris Kirk. They could be using, maybe Cam Davis is getting some love. In fact, this could be Harry Hall. That jumps it up quite a bit to 95%. This is going to be a duplicated lineup quite a bit, especially if you're going Henley Pendrith. And again, I'm a full fade of Taylor Pendrith. I do not like Pendrith this week. So, I like some of these other players. Like, I like Henley a lot. I'm going to use Henley a lot. I like Hall. I like Berger. So you're going to have to find a way to mix and match here, because this is very, very popular. I think a sleeper might be Hoshino. I don't hate that. Rikuya Hoshino. He's played here a couple times, not a whole lot of success, but he has been decent over at the Zozo, which again is another short course, generally positional. I don't hate it. I like a couple others more in the 6Ks, but at least that is a player I'm at least aware of coming from Japan or the DP World Tour. Like I said, I like a couple others more. I like Frankie Sapan a whole lot at his same price. But if you have a strong feeling on it, I don't hate it, Phil. I really don't. I would be a little bit wary of the tee time. It appears that he has the bad half of the draw. But again, if you didn't see it, check out the beginning of the show here at the end, and then or whenever I shut the stream down, you would see the forecast. Maybe you view it differently than I do, but I think the Thursday PM, Friday AM has a pretty significant advantage. If our fellow contestants are going into the 10Ks, it looks like they're going Connors. I really don't think they have to go down into the 6Ks. Again, this might be Joe Highsmith, Daniel Berger, Kirk, Cameron Davis is getting some attention in here as well. Let's see some others. 10% Eric Cole, maybe. But if they go Connors, then they're probably going to have to jump down from McNeely. They might be able to do a Pendrith. Austin Eckroat is also getting a lot of attention, at least per Fantasy National. Luke Clanton, Ben Griffin, 81 Harry Hall. So there's another way they could go about building a lineup if they want to pay up for Connors instead of Henley. Drop down off of McNeely or Pendrith, go to Eckroat, and then use Griffin. Phillips, Norlander, Hoey, Bridgman. Get to Aldo. See, a lot different this week, especially in a full field. Like last week, I was so high on Sepp Straka. I mean, one, for his performance, but two, he was so unique in a pretty known quantity. This week, I'm not in the 6Ks at all. I'm just not. My lowest play with any amount of significance is Ryo Hitsatsune. Like, I'll use Hubbard in a lineup. I might use Mac Meisner in a lineup. But I'm not going into the 6s at all, mainly because I'm also basically avoiding these two, which tells you the kind of lineups I'm building. So, if you have strong feelings on a couple of 6Ks, that's great. I don't. So that's what I hear people saying. We don't need much. No, I don't think we do, because I think these 10Ks are beatable. I mean, this obvious answers are obvious, but give me the field over Hideki in terms of winning the tournament. Now, I do think Connors presents a unique challenge in the sense that it's going to be so windy. You need somebody in control of his golf ball. Connors is so accurate, both off the tee and with his irons. The thing is, Hideki can spray it a little bit, and if he starts spraying it, I just don't think it works out well for him. And he also gained 10.5 on the greens last week at the Century. I mean, even if he was a great putter, that's unsustainable. And he's not a great putter. So, I mean, I can see that cratering. So I just think these two 10Ks are beatable, which leaves us a whole lot of room in the nines. The unfortunate thing from my perspective, I've said it a couple times, is that most of the players that I like seem to have the bad half of the draw. So what kind of lineups am I making? Well, I mentioned that if I come into the 10Ks, it's most likely for Corey Connors, and yeah, he is the most or more projected of the two. But I also gave you a couple names in the 10Ks. I gave you a couple names in the 10Ks. One was Patton Kizzire, who has been very, very good since the fall. On the good half of the draw. I don't hate it. I am a little concerned that he lost strokes with his irons last week. Quite a big step up in competition from the fall, obviously. But, I mean, there's no denying that he was in very, very good form. So, Patton Kizzire is one. I also mentioned Frankie Sapan. I do like that Korn Ferry Tour graduate quite a bit. But the mad scientist play was Ryan Gerard. But again, I'm not in the 6Ks much, if at all. But I'm going to use Ryan Gerard, another Korn Ferry Tour grad, a lot for the reason of he devours par fives. And that's what you have to do here. That's what you have to do at Waialae. Even though there's only 2 of them, you have to make sure you score on them. And Gerard scores on par fives. Also helps that he's less than 1%. I wouldn't go crazy with this. Again, this is more in the fact that I play multiple lineups, so I can afford to have some coverage. But for the uniqueness, I'm going to take Gerard here. And I think you're probably going to have to try to get pretty greedy in terms of trying to get unique. There's a few players in the low 7s you can look at. I mentioned Svensson. Griot is also kind of interesting. He's played well here. Less than 4%. Generally not a good putter, but has putt well on average and fast, kind of slower speed Bermuda greens. We'll talk about somebody who can generally control his golf ball in the wind. Kind of interesting. I mentioned Keith Mitchell. Yeah, bad putter and all, but Keith Mitchell. So let's throw. Not Mitchell. I don't want to do Mitchell. Let's do. Because I'm saving him for the other lineup. Yeah, let's do Griot, I suppose. Or Svensson, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. Griot will get a little bit of uniqueness. And then you can just go kind of crazy up here at top and get greedy. Maybe you like Matt McNeely a lot. I like Ben On. Eckroat, Siwoo Kim. Somebody that you can definitely take a long look at, considering he won 3 years ago here. And you still have 8,400 per player. I like Clanton, the player. I don't like the ownership. You can take a long look at Kurt Kitayama. I'm with you on that one, and I'm saving him for the second type of lineup. Take a long look at Kitayama. I think Kitayama is interesting this week, and then 82 is Ben Griffin. Love Ben Griffin this week. You're probably pretty unique if you're going Gerard, but Griot, a little speculative to be fair, but on the good half of the draw, has played Sony well. Like this is a lineup that's probably pretty unique. You've got one of the tournament favorites, a former champion, one of the more popular plays should be, just a steady rock in your lineup in Ben Griffin. And Kitayama is kind of a pivot off of a lot of the chalk, especially like the Taylor Pendrith and Eckroat chalk. I don't hate it. But the lineups that I'm building the most, I'm with you, Phil. I'm actually starting Russell Henley and then Ben On. Love Ben On this week, as we'll see here in a moment. And in fact, I've been trying to get greedy enough to go like Ben Griffin or Eckroat in that third spot because I'm bottoming out at Ryo Hitsatsune. that is the Japanese player, the not so well known Japanese player I am targeting this week. You mentioned Hoshino. I'm going Ryo Hitsatsune. I love Harris English in this as well. And 77, take a long look at Tom Hoagie again, or Matt McCarty. You want to talk about a putter on a course that promotes putting? It's Matt McCarty. You can also look at Denny McCarthy as well. I'm going to throw in Tom Hoagie. He seems to be fairly unique. These are the kind of lineups I've been building. I've been going double nines. Very occasionally I might throw a Connors into this, but I've generally been going double nines. Usually going Henley and Ben on. Sometimes it'll be Russell Henley and Siwoo. Sometimes it's Ben on and, once in a while a Matt McNeely. But I've been going double nines, bottoming out at Ryo Hitsatsune. Always loved Mac Hughes. Mac is really bad here. He's not been good here. Good putter, good around the green. If around the green matters a lot this week, I like Mac Hughes a whole lot more. And I think it could, based on that forecast. He's just... I'll go to Fantasy National real quick. He's just not been very good at Waialae. Mackenzie Hughes. And the Sony. Yeah. So, he did have a top 20, 3 or 4 years ago. Missed cut. And the fact that he's a very good putter, he's lost more often than he's not. I'll have to swivel out this way. He'll spike here, but more often than not, he loses strokes here, despite the fact that he's a good putter. So, I don't see it this week for Mac Hughes at Waialae. Conceptually, it should work. It just hasn't for him. And prior performance at the Sony has been a pretty big deal. At least for former champions. So those are the kind of lineups that I've been building. These balanced lineups, trying to get maybe slightly greedy up top, doing a double nine. Sometimes it might be Henley or Ben on, and then go Eckroat Griffin, and then hit and try to squeeze in like a Harry Hall. I will squeeze a Cam Davis into my lineup since he's played very well around Waialae, but this is generally the kind of the core, the Russell Henley, Ben Griffin, Austin Eckroat, and then filling it out from there. All right, looks like we'll go to the pick selection here momentarily. As of right now, it seems that at least most of the viewers who have voted are saying that they're going to be using Hideki of the two 10Ks, which I understand. Coming off the win, my vote's going to be neither. And again, take that how you will. I played multiple lineups, so I'm going to have Connors in a couple. I'll probably have Hideki once. If I had to only play one lineup, my choice would be neither. That's why I'm giving you that neither answer. But while we finish off the show, feel free to continue to put your answers in there. But let's go to the selections for the week. And again, if you want to see Gabe's and my full write-up, Gabe put that out over on social media. So if you want to hear a lot of our explanations or see it in writing, go check out Gabe's social media. His handle's in the description, and it's also right there on your screen. I know he's chalk, but I'm feeling the Hawaiian double. If you're feeling it, you're feeling it. That's the most important opinion is yours. I'm just giving you what I see statistically. I just don't. I don't think Hideki. I think Hideki will come back to earth pretty heavily with that putter. If he doesn't, you're going to be in a good spot, especially since he seems to be the more unique of the two. So let's cover these selections here fairly quickly. Winners. Gabe is going to go out on a major limb like he did last week. Again, giving a little bit of razz there to him, but nothing wrong with that selection at all. Russell Henley, very, very common choice, logical choice. I love that selection. I'm going to use Russell Henley a whole lot in my lineups. Don't hate that at all. I'm actually going to go with Ben On, partially to be a little bit different, because I do like Russell Henley a lot, but I'm going to take Ben On to win this week at Wiley. Our favorite plays, I like this one as well. Daniel Berger seems like he's getting back healthy, much for the same reasons I talked about Harris English. Ride Daniel Berger. He seems to be healthy now. He's played well in the fall. He's a little bit more owned, quite a bit more owned than Harris English. That's why I'm a lot higher on Harris English. But I don't hate Daniel Berger at all. So that's Gabe's favorite play. I'm going to go with Ryo Hitsatsune. A lot has to do with the uniqueness. But I think our fellow contestants are sleeping on how good Ryo Hitsatsune is, and this sets up well for him based on, evident by his T30 here last year, and I think he improves on that. Gabe's fading Taylor Pendrith, which would have been, one of my top selections in that regard. So to be different, I'm going to fade Keegan Bradley for the reasons that I mentioned. I just don't like him on Bermuda. I think last year was a fluke, an outlier in putting. I think he comes back down to earth with that. Mad Scientist play, I'm going Ryan Gerard. Gabe's going to take Frankie Sapan. Don't hate that choice at all from Gabe. I like Sapan a lot. Fear of missing out. Gabe's going to go with McNeely. Heavily owned, been playing well, makes a lot of sense. I'm going to go with Cam Davis. A lot because he is 5 for 5. His last 5 tries here at Wiley. I know nothing statistically looks like it goes for him except for this putter. 123rd by Fantasy National. 10% ownership isn't great. It's the fact that he has simply played Wiley so very well the past 5 years. He's my fear of missing out. I'm going to find a way to put him in a lineup just to make sure I have him. Thus, the definition of FOMO. And then, lastly, the wild card category, if you will, for this week. Last week, it was top debutante. This week, we're going to go with something similar, top 2025 debut, meaning somebody who did not play at the Century. Who do we think plays the best? We're both on the similar line of thinking. I tried to use somebody different from Gabe. I couldn't get there. I'm all over Ben Griffin this week, and you will see that later on over on social media in my betting card, in my top player usage. I'm going to have a whole lot of Ben Griffin. So there's our selections. Again, I reiterate that if you want to see our full explanation of our choices, that has been posted over on Gabe's social media page. His handle is right there under his profile picture. And go make sure you are subscribed to his article as well. It's a really great way to start your week of preparation. Can't say enough good things about it. He does a lot of good work on that. A lot of in-depth course analysis. So I really enjoy reading his article every week. But thanks to Phil for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little money in the process. Some weeks better than others. So hopefully, Phil, you'll remember how good last week was when I inevitably get some things wrong, because it will happen. But we're going to try to continue the success that we had last week, especially in Phil's case. We're going to try to keep that momentum for the first full field event for 2025, the Sony Open. Thanks again for tuning in and for all the support. I really appreciate it. For all of the wagers you've made this week for the Sony Open, for all of the DFS contests you play this week for the Sony Open, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.